Okay.
Well, welcome again to everybody to the Friday edition of Richardson Plano Networkers. Dave Roberts is known worldwide as the Vision Warrior, and he has a unique vision and has dedicated his life to changing the world one dream at a time by helping aspiring leaders discover, clarify, and progress towards their dream vision. He's the creator of the Vision Challenge, and if you haven't taken that, I suggest you talk to him. He's the host of one of the fastest growing podcasts, Warrior versus Zombie, and the author of soon to be bestseller, Vision Warrior Survive and Thrive in the Zombie Apocalypse. During his 35 years of business transformation leadership, Dave has spoken to tens of thousands of aspiring leaders and has been the driving force behind the growth and transformation of numerous organizations and individuals, leading to billions of dollars in sales and immeasurable impact. Currently, he's the CEO of My Vision Warrior. He's the co-founder and chief vision officer of the Business Growth Network, the Vision Warrior for My Wellbeing Compass, and leader of Richardson Plano Networkers. And we ask this question, because if you haven't read the announcement, what is the one gift our Creator has given us? What is the one power that you have right now in this moment that can change everything? So please welcome Dave Roberts.
Wow. Thanks, Randy. As always, a good job there. I appreciate you. All right. So, one of the things I want to accomplish today is I want you to really get tuned in. Obviously, I want you to listen to me, but I also want you to kind of tune into yourself. So, if you can do this for me for a second, I want to get everybody here just to kind of close your eyes for a second as I'm doing and just really get in touch with what you're thinking about right now. And obviously you're thinking about me, but what are the thoughts that are going through your mind? What are the things that you're thinking about? I want you to really kind of, as we go through this, I'm going to ask you a number of questions. And as we go through this presentation, whenever you have a reaction to something, I really want you to think about why you're having that reaction. Okay. So I encourage you, if you have something to take notes on, to write down if something inspires you, something you hear that you liked, even if you heard something you didn't like, I'd encourage you to write that down too, because one of the things I want you to do after we do this talk is to take some form of action. For those who have, including myself, who've been to conferences, heard speakers, heard a lot of meaningful stuff, even read books and listened to podcasts and done a lot of different things, it really doesn't matter. You might hear something you heard before and say, oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I agree with that. Or I disagree with that. But the real question is then, what are you going to do with it? So as we talk about here, I want you to take away something hopefully today that will make a difference in your life. That's my prayer. That's my objective here. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through some slides. I don't have a lot of slides, but it's interesting. And the first few slides, I'm really going to ask you to really tune in to what is going on inside your head. Okay, so let's put this up here, and I'm going to go to full screen, and hopefully everybody now can see my screen. So as we said, I'm calling this Warrior Mastery of Destiny. And the key here is, for those of you who've been tuned in as we've gone through what I call Stay Connected and Thrive, which is really our whole implementation of this Friday meeting. About a month ago, I did a talk as we appeared at that point to be emerging from COVID-19. 2 months or 3 months ago, I did a talk, what do we do going into COVID-19? And then about a month ago, I did a talk on what do we do coming out of COVID-19. And one of the things, as I said in the description of this talk, is we've all now been in this COVID government lockdown journey for about 3 months. And we've really emerged into a new world. And if you don't believe that this is a new world you're emerging into, then write that down. In other words, if you don't think it's going to change, write that down, because that could be a topic that we could have as a follow-up for a one-on-one. But it has changed. So I asked you these questions a month ago, and I actually gave you a worksheet that helped you maybe answer those or kind of see where you're at. And for those who are on this call, if you want that worksheet, as I posted early on, if you got here early in the chat, is put your name, and if you know that you're on the directory, you'll just have to put the name and say worksheet. If you aren't sure that you're in the directory or that I have your email, then give me your email and I will send that worksheet to you directly so that you can fill it out, and then we can talk about it afterwards. Okay, so, and I'll remind you of that at the end, but I wanted to get that out there. But I said, ask this question: where are you right now? And let me ask it not as where were you a month ago, but let me ask you, where are you right now as we're in this phase? We talked about earlier COVID-19, and they're shutting down the bars at noon today, and we asked the question, who's drinking before noon? Why did they wait till, that was kind of a funny question, but the question is, where are you now? Not saying where are the people, where are you now? Are you fearful still? Are you hopeful? Are you determined to do something different? Are you cautious? And the real question is why? Why are you having those particular feelings? So, are you wondering why it all happened? Are you ready to move on? Do you wish things would return to the way they were before the shutdown, before the virus? And are you determined to find or create new possibilities? None of those are wrong or right answers. It's really more a statement of where you're at. Now there's not going to be a lot of conversation here. We're not going to analyze any of this, but I'm going to present a few slides here that I want you to look at. These are facts. I'm going to tell you, these are facts from yesterday. I pulled this down. These are the CDC, European CDC. You can find other facts from other places. This is the total confirmed U.S. cases on the left. On the right is the total confirmed U.S. deaths. I just want you to look at those. And as you look at these charts, I want you to think about what that means to you, what it is, and if you reacted to that in one way or another, write it down. Here's another set of facts. This is the daily confirmed U.S. deaths from COVID-19, starting and then going to today, or yesterday, actually. I didn't do it today. But you could go on this site that's listed here and you can get it updated. It's updated every day. And then the next slide over to the right of that is new daily U.S. deaths per million. So it's the number of deaths from COVID-19 relative to our population. Okay? Again, the last slide I have on this is the world and the U.S. case fatality rate, which is basically the number of confirmed fatalities divided by the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19. As you can see, that was a little, right now it's gone to a little, worldwide and pretty much in the U.S., a little above 5%. Okay? In other words, if you have a case, 5%. Not going to get into what it means statistically or get into a debate on that. And the last one is, how do you react when you see that slide that says coronavirus news updates? If that pops on your screen. Okay? I want you just to react to those. Now, Main thing I wanted you to do is just kind of ground yourself in where we are today. How many of you are familiar with the Rorschach test, right? You've seen the Rorschach test. Little story goes like this. Guy goes into the psychiatrist, and psychiatrist administers the Rorschach test, which is the ink blot test, right? And he hands him this ink block, and he says, so what is it that, or he asks him what kind of issues he's having. And he says, well, I'm totally obsessed with sex. He says, I can't just, I have to, everything, every minute I'm thinking about sex. I can't deal with it. And so that he gives him an ink blot, and he says, well, tell me what you see there. And the guy looks at it, and he turns looks, and he says, well, it's clearly a man and a woman making love. Psychiatrist says, interesting, makes a little note, gives him another ink blot, not the same one, a different one. He turns it around, does the same thing, looks at it, stares at it, looks back at the psychiatrist and says, yep, definitely a man and a woman having sex. Okay, says, okay, makes a note of that. He gives him a third one. He does exactly the same thing and the same answer. Man and a woman having sex. And the psychiatrist says, okay, well, obviously you are obsessed with sex. And he says, well, he says, me, but what about you? You keep giving me all these dirty pictures. Okay, so again, the facts really aren't the source. We're all stressed. Let me put this out there. I don't care what the reason on, but you can look at the statistics, you can look at what's going on, and whether you say we're encouraged or discouraged in any way, we've all gone through, I think, in this period, some degree, maybe varying degrees, but some degrees of real stress. And the question is, what is the source of that, and what do we do about it? And that's what I want to talk about today, because it's fascinating to me, but I'm doing a podcast, I'm having one-on-ones with people, I'm talking to clients, I'm out there, and I get people saying, well, I'm under stress. And so this isn't anything I think is arguable. What is the source of stress? A lot of people say, well, the COVID-19 or the government shutdown or this party or that party or the riots in the streets, right? Okay, all those things are happening, but that's not the source of your stress, okay? The source of your stress is really the meaning you're giving to those facts. So when I went through those slides, and I wanted you to look at those, and I wanted you to react to those about the COVID-19, where we're at today, where we've been. Self-observance and self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools that you have. An animal doesn't think about why they're thinking something. You ever seen a dog barking in their sleep? I always wonder, did they ever wake up and wonder what they were thinking? I mean, they really don't. We have a frontal lobe. We have the ability that God has given us to really think about what we're thinking about. And the beauty is, if we're thinking about what we're thinking about, then we've engaged that frontal lobe. If we're not thinking about what we're thinking about, if we're just reacting, if we're reading something and it causes us to have an emotion and we don't know why, that's basically unconscious. You're using, as I call it, your zombie brain. So it doesn't come from facts. In fact, you have a superpower. Here's the superpower. Here's the one thing everybody on this call has. Everybody on this call was given at birth, and that is the power of choice. Okay? We all have it. We get to choose. You say, I didn't get to choose the coronavirus. No, but you got to choose what it meant. But here's the thing is, We get to choose these three things. Now, interestingly enough, Scott Schilling talked to us, and in his book, if you read his book, it's an amazing book. And here's one thing: he gave you 5 things when something bad happens or something happens in your life. What are the 5 questions? And if you haven't read the book or you haven't, you can go back and look at his talk. But there's 5 questions to ask. I'm going to give you really 3 decisions to make when you're under stress. The first one is what to focus on. You say, well, what does that mean? What am I going to focus on? When the COVID happened, I love saying the COVID. It's kind of like now become a noun, but whatever. But when the COVID happened, what are you focused on? Were you focused on, is everybody wearing a mask? Were you focused on how close am I in? What are you focused on? You get to decide. Okay, so, and the fact is, if whatever you're focused on, you're going to feel, you're going to see. It's called your reticular activating system in your mind, right? So if you're focused and saying, okay, I'm going to focus on social spacing or focus on whatever, it's going to make you feel a certain way. If I'm going to focus on being healthier, then you're going to see healthy people. You're going to be looking for those kinds of things. The Bible says, seek and ye shall find. That's not a trivial thing. You're given the choice to decide what you're going to focus on or not focus on, okay? That's a powerful tool. The other thing is you get to decide. I don't get to decide for you. I can try and convince you of what things mean, but you have the decision. It's up to you to decide what things mean. Because what you decide they mean will also determine how you feel and what you ultimately do. The last one is the obvious one. You get to decide what to do with that information, with those decisions. A lot of people say, okay, well, it's not as simple as that. But you know what? If you add a new meaning to something, you can change your life. If you don't like your health today, you can decide to change it. If you don't like the situation that you're in, your relationship, you can change it. Now, you probably ought to look in the mirror because you probably need to change yourself first. But once you've changed yourself, you can improve that relationship. If you don't like the state of your business, you can change it. If you don't like your bank account, you can change it. All of those are decisions. Really, it's not the conditions of our life, but the decisions of our life that will control your destiny. So if you're unconscious, the thing is we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day that go through our mind. Those thoughts evoke decisions, actions. Some of them are manifest in physical things that we do, and other times we just ignore them. But the bottom line is they're happening. You're not thinking about, okay, breathe in, breathe out. One of the problems I have, as I've told people that have done a podcast with me, is I forget to breathe. Okay, when I get under stress, I'll sit there and I'll talk for a while, and all of a sudden I'll realize I have no oxygen. And my subconscious doesn't always get me breathing normally, especially when I'm under stress. And that's part of the reason why is when we're under stress, guess what? We're running from the bear. We're getting away from things. So if you allow yourself, if you've decided that I'm going to stay in this state of fear and I'm going to wait for this condition to change, then you're really relegating yourself to an unconscious decision, because it is a decision. When you're going through this, you may say, okay, I'm going to decide to wait and see what happens. A lot of people are doing that. I'm talking to people every day. Okay, I'm just going to hole up and I'm going to hunker down and I'm going to wait and see what happens, and then I'll get back out there. That's a decision. It's a legitimate decision. It's going to affect your destiny one way or the other. Maybe good, maybe bad. I think I want to tell you a story because in 2001, September 7th of 2001, I had an experience. I was reflecting, and I encourage you to do this. Think about your life. Think about two decisions, not necessarily big decisions, two even little decisions that in your life that you made, that if you would have made them differently, your whole life would be different. Anybody think of those? Can you think of something where you decided that, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you ran into somebody that you hadn't seen in a while, and that person ended up being your husband or your wife or your life partner or somebody that now you're friends with. It could be anything. Or maybe it's a lot of different things. So let me tell you a story in my own life that when I was going through this, preparing for this. In 2001, September 7th, I was working on a deal. I worked for a company called EDS, and I was doing large multi-billion-dollar outsourcing transactions, which I've told you about before. And we were working on a deal where we were going to transform healthcare. We were going to transform the way physicians, hospitals, doctors get paid. And I was working with some insurance companies, and it was a big deal. It was really going to be life-changing. And I was working with Baylor Scott and White Health. That's where I developed a relationship with the CEO there. And we were doing some really, really inspiring and cool stuff. And if you know me, you know I'm still very inspired and very motivated in the area of health and wellness and our own journey. And on September 7th, I was driving this whole initiative, this whole deal. And my son came in to me and said, Dad, I have a basketball game on Monday. This was on Friday. And he said, on Monday, can you be at my game? And I said, well, son, I've got to go to New York. We're going to ring the bell on Wall Street. We're announcing this deal. It's a big deal. But I decided for some unknown reason, actually, I know it wasn't unknown. I wanted him to know that he was the most important thing in my life. And I said, okay, I'll be there. I told my team that they could go on ahead. Most of them, I normally wouldn't fly out on Sundays. That was my decision. They could go out, be there on Monday. We're going to ring the bell on Tuesday, and everything's going to be cool. And I'll be there on Monday. Just get set up, make sure things are going. And I made that decision on Friday. On Monday, I got up, went to my son's game. It was a beautiful thing. And then I had to get up early the next morning and drive to the airport. And on my way to the airport, I was listening. I made a practice of always doing self-development, or not always, but since I was in my early 20s. And I was listening to a CD. I think it was a CD at that point. Yeah, it was. Sometime before that, I listened to cassette tapes, if you remember what those were. And I was listening to a CD on the radio, and my phone rang. And I had one of those. At that point in time, I think it was a flip phone. I don't remember if it was a flip phone or if it was one of those brick phones, but it was not my smartphone. But I got a phone call on my cellular from my wife, and she said, are you listening to the news? And I said, no. And she said, well, you need to turn the news on. And when I turned on the news, as I'm heading to the airport, I hear the news talking about a plane that had just hit one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. And then while I was listening to that same newscast, they said, oh my gosh, another plane has hit a tower. And I immediately realized that this wasn't an accident and that something was dramatically changed. So I turned around in my car and drove back. And that one decision, number one, I got to be at home instead of stuck in New York. Actually, one of the guys that was there had been in his life. He's from Baylor Scott and White Health, and he was a medical director. He'd been an emergency room doctor, and he got roped into helping people that were in triage from the whole thing going on with people when the Twin Towers fell. My point is that those people made a decision to be there, and his decision to be there allowed him to do it. My decision seemed inconsequential at the time, but ended up having a major effect on my life. As I look, what happened after that is I had been being recruited by another company And I realized when that decision was made, and I made a life decision with my kids, that also that decision led to me ultimately deciding to go to Accenture, ultimately retiring shortly 5 years later. And it really led to a whole bunch of decisions that all started with me deciding to be home for my son's basketball game. And I think if you think about this, guys, you can find that evidence. And the main reason I'm sharing this with you is not just to share the story, but for you to understand that the things you decide today, the little decisions, what you're going to focus on. Are you going to focus on your family? Are you going to focus on, what something means? I can't do what I want to do in my job. A lot of people look at what's going on right now with the economy shut down and in their business, and I work with business owners, and some of them say, okay, this means I'm going to go broke and my business is gone. If that's the meaning you assigned to this, most likely that's what's going to happen. On the other hand, I know people that are saying, wow, this has really opened up a lot of possibilities that maybe are coming a lot faster. Do you think that the people at Zoom, we're on this Zoom call, do you think that maybe they went, holy crap, I'm glad we were prepared for this when this thing hit, right? And now they're seeing a whole different world of possibilities. My question to you is, what meaning are you assigning? What did you decide to assign as far as meaning here? Does this mean that you're going to get the COVID and die? Or does this mean this is an opportunity for you because you can be healthier and you can finally get around to improving your diet and your lifestyle and live to it? I made a decision that sounds maybe silly or trivial, but in 2017, I stood up in front of this group of people in the room at Original Pancake House and said, if anything were possible, I'm going to have a six-pack abs. Randy knows this because he was in the room. And that silly decision, standing up in front of the room, led me on a journey that losing 70 pounds, doing a bunch of stuff, because I simply made a decision to do that. It changed my life. So again, what do things mean? And what are you going to do about it? And so does this mean that you can do it? And then obviously then it doesn't happen if you don't decide what you're going to do about it. Because frankly, if you assign a different meaning, you're going to take a different action. And then of course there's always grace, as I say, or fortune. But the funny thing is, if your car's in motion, you can steer it and all of a sudden those opportunities on your journey appear. But if you're standing there waiting for things to happen, that grace, those opportunities, they tend not to show up in your life. So a lot of people say, well, how did you do that? So really the warrior journey is pretty straightforward here. And I want to talk a little bit about that. We talked about the little decisions, but they lead to the bigger decisions. They lead to what it is that you really want. And for those of you who know me, I'm the vision warrior. I'm not going to, go back to that again. But again, what decisions are you making and how do they align with your life purpose? Do you even know what your life purpose is? If you don't know what your life purpose is, let's have a one-to-one. Let me help you. It doesn't cost you a dime, but let me help you go through the vision discovery process. If you don't know what unique value that you are always providing, whether you realize it or not, to the people that in your life, let's sit down and talk. And if you don't know where you're going, then any destination will work, right? So what is it, if anything were possible, that your life would look like? What does your ideal day look like? It doesn't mean you don't do anything. What are the decisions that you're making? So it's your choice. But these are real decisions. The key that I find with warriors is they tend to make decisions rapidly. In other words, they see the dots, they connect the dots, they get somebody to help them connect the dots, and when they figure out what it is, they make a decision. And they can make some pretty big decisions, and then they set out to cut off the other possibilities and make that decision work. Okay, when When you're making a big decision, and again, I think there's a lot of people on this call. I know you're all warriors, and I've talked to a lot of warriors, and that's one of the things that I've seen in all their stories. And sometimes we don't appreciate our stories, by the way. And that's what I love about doing Warrior versus Zombie is I get to talk to people who think that their story isn't that significant. Well, guess what? Your future and your destiny is determined by the story you tell yourself. It's not what you tell me on my podcast. So you need to tell yourself that you have a life purpose that nobody else has, that you have value that nobody else has. And you're on a journey of your own making, and you're making those decisions every day. And if you're willing to take that journey, I want to tell you, I talk about things that people mean. One of the things, and I'm going to digress for a second here, that really has fascinated me doing these stories. I can't tell you how many people in the Warrior versus Zombie podcast have dealt with cancer, have dealt with bankruptcy. People that are on their journey and successful and doing some meaningful things right now, and these things have come into their lives. There's people that I haven't done on the podcast that I've had one-on-ones with who've had major losses, either family members or deaths in the family. They've had all kinds of things. And the question that they all said was, it just fascinated. Tom Prickle, who I interviewed, he's been dealing with, he has cancer, was dealing with cancer, he's still dealing with cancer. And when I said, what's the major zombie? That wasn't it. That was an aside, because he decided that was just a battle he was going to win, and he was going to keep moving forward. I have a number of people, Shannon McGraw-Dietz on my podcast, who talks about her bankruptcy and all the hurricane and her own cancer battle and divorce. And the point is, the question is, what meaning does that have? And you get to decide. Does it mean I'm no good, I can't ever have a relationship, or does it mean I've got a battle to fight that I'm going to win? So you, as a warrior, if you want to change your destiny, you make that decision. Ricky Jean talks about his decision that when he decided to go into the music business, right? His decision was all of a sudden streaming music came and the whole business changed. And his dream of, writing a song and having it make him millions of dollars, maybe that whole thing changed. But guess what? He's still making decisions daily to position himself to do that. So whether it's something new or whatever, he's doing that. And I could go on and on. I'm just so fascinated. And one of the things I really wanted to share is all of you guys are warriors. The real question really is, in this time, especially in this time, are you just going to survive, or are you going to thrive? Are you going to look at it and say, okay, my meaning is I'm, again, as I said, just hunker down and get through this, and then I'll deal with it later? That's a decision. Whether it's good or not is really not mine to determine, but it is a decision. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go wait till it gets back to where I can do what I'm doing. I have people all the time right now saying, well, I'll come into the room and network with you when the virus is gone. Well, I'm sorry, the virus won't be gone. There's always going to be a virus. So we've got to figure that out. And right now we're making accommodation. When I realized that wasn't going to be a possibility, we canceled the meetings for a week, and then we started on Zoom. And that meant I had to decide to learn a lot of things, and you had to learn how to deal with me on Zoom, and we had to learn how to have fun in this environment, even though for a full-on extrovert like me, it sucks. I'll just be honest with you. It's very hard to deal with because I want to hug you. I want to shake your hand. I want to put my arm around your shoulder. And I want to make sure you understand that. And I'd like to get that feedback myself. So, but the meaning of this is that we're going to go forward. So the bottom line is these things start with little decisions, but they end up, as you look at them in retrospect, as big decisions. Sorry, I didn't mean to go back. And so the last slide is, what are the actions you're going to take? So as a warrior, the question really is, and in this worksheet that I offered up a month ago, I don't know how many of you have ever actually gone through it, but the question is, if these are the decisions and you're going through it, what things will I change as I go forward? If you're not willing to change anything, then your history is going to become your destiny. I just can't tell you that enough. If you're not going to be conscious of your decision making and you're going to let your decisions go on autopilot, then guess what? Your current personality or personal reality is a product of your personality. So your current personal reality, where you're at today, is a product of your personality, and that personality is driven by the things you do over and over and over again, right? So the point is, what am I going to start? What am I going to stop? What am I going to do more of? What am I going to do less of? What opportunities will I consider? And so on and so forth. And then really going back to in line, making sure that all of those things that you're going to do are aligned with your life purpose and the value you can provide, because that'll allow you to fund your journey. And then where are you going? Know where you're going. Know that when you run into an obstacle that it's worth working around, and then be committed to it. So that, as I've shared before, is we have to be committed to our journey. We have to be, and if you're grounded in the life purpose and those kinds of things, then you're going to sustain those. It has to be done on a daily basis. It isn't you come out of this meeting, you wrote it down, and you're good to go. It's really, as I've talked about before, the actions that are going. And then finally, as I say, if you've listened to my podcast, I say warriors. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses, that yet we move forward. These highs and lows are all part of who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. Every day we battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world that seek to hold us back. But warriors move forward. Moving forward means I focus forward. Moving forward means I understand the meaning of the things that get in my path, and I still move forward. Moving forward means I make the decisions that may seem risky and may not be in my comfort zone, but I do them anyway. That's what a warrior does moving forward. And I have a desire to work with warriors for the rest of my life, and seeing and witnessing the achievement that all of them have to offer the world. And that's what I mean when I say changing the world one dream at a time. So with that, I'm going to, you want to schedule a time, go to myvisionwarrior.com, email me, david@myvisionwarrior.com, and we can talk about, where you're at, what decisions you're making, or maybe I can help you in any way. And as Randy said, and I said pretty much everybody on this call, that's not a condition of whether you pay me or not. That's not my first choice. When I retired in 2005 to make a difference and not just make money, and I was making a 7-digit income, I vowed that I would never make the financial question my first filter for whether or not I serve you. And that's why this group is what it is, I believe. One of the reasons why, at least my focus in this group, is what it is. And so with that, I'm done. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And I want to thank you for your generous attention and your investment in time. And I'll open it up. Let's see, what time do we got? We have 10 minutes. So I've got just a couple of announcements. Thank you. Thank you for the applause. I can see it on the screen. Love you guys. Anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts as they were going through this? Anything that was, if you do, raise your hand and I'll see it. Ricky Jean, go ahead.
I hear everything you're saying, and I have met people in my life that no matter what happens, sees the glass half empty, and I was seeing the glass half full. How does a person who does see everything through the lens of half empty, how do they get past something like the coronavirus thing? I mean, I'm not that person, but I know some people that are, and I don't know how to help them to start seeing things in a more positive manner.
You know, that's such an awesome question, Randy. Ricky, I saw Randy nodding, distracted me. Um, the thing is, I actually was putting together like a 5 day process to if people wanted to work through this for that very reason, because it's kind of like if I don't if you haven't already figured out what to do, if your default, if you will, going into something like this, and it's not just COVID, by the way. Like you said, the person you're most likely talking about is their personality. Remember, I said your personality drives your personal reality. Is that's part of their makeup, and the only way that person is going to wake up and really make a different decision on the meaning or the way they view it is if they are willing to get some help with that. I mean, really be self-observant and self-aware that they are looking at things that way, and maybe it's you can help them. Maybe they need to just have a one-on-one with you and say, hey dude, you're always looking at things half empty, and then maybe they can get it from there, but maybe not. That's why people like Nicole have a job. That's why some other people in on this, that we're coaches. That's why Randy says I can help you. That's why Bill says I can help you. There's people here, maybe we monetize certain things, but there's a lot of people in this room that if you just had a one-on-one or on this Zoom and said, I'm struggling with this. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, that they would help you see it. And I would do that. The first thing would be, if you recognize in that, make sure they're aware of it. Make sure that they see it that way. And sometimes that's a hard message to deliver. But I have to deliver that as a coach, as a mentor, time and time and time again. Yeah, Michael. Hopefully that helps. Michael, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. So actually, I've been members of other organizations, of course, scary, but they have basically, Ricky, sometimes they go so extreme, they say to cut off that relationship. And I don't agree with that, to be honest with you, personally, because to be honest with you, my wife is like that, but you have to keep it with a grain of salt. You have to study who they are. And so one thing that gave me great clarity was the fact that the way they put it was I was a high achiever, and no, I was the high I forget what it's called. Sorry, my son just ran across the room. It just kind of distracted me a little bit.
Squirrel.
Yeah, squirrel. So the high achiever is my wife, and I forget what the other term was, but I'm the entrepreneur. So I always am the guy that says, how do we get things done, and what dream do we need to get done? And she's the person that says, okay, great that you're dreaming, but how do we legitimately achieve this with nuts and bolts? And she sometimes actually, the fact that she's the achiever, and she gives me the courage and the permission to keep dreaming. Almost like there was a time this week I was like, should I just stop? I was having a moment of doubt, and I said, should I just stop and go get a regular job like I used to have? And she was like, no, you're doing the right thing. Keep going. And
Yeah.
so if you have the high achiever that speaks into you like that, that speaks huge when that person's not wired that way. Now,
Yeah, yeah, Michael, that's a beautiful thing. And frankly, a lot of times I think, and I'm not saying I find that my biggest role in a conversation with people is reminding them to believe in themselves and believe in their vision and their mission. And that's what I know. I see Nicole nodding. I know, and Bill as well, and those who are really mentoring, and Lloyd and others. It's really part of what you have to do is help them really realize that anything is possible. That's not just something I say. If anything were possible, let me tell you something. With God, all things are possible. All things are possible. If you can imagine it, you can have it. It's just your decisions. Number one, what the situation means. Number one. Number two, how you're going to focus from there. And number three, what are you going to do is the how. The key is You got to have the dream first. So it is a team with your wife who's a glass half empty. You don't need to cut those people out of your life. You need to connect with those people, because for a dreamer like me, having somebody help me with the how is a good thing. I need somebody to help me with the how, but the how doesn't mean a lot if you don't know where you're going. The how doesn't mean a lot if you don't have the vision of where you want to go. And I find too many people that are what I call trapped in their license to operate. Their calendar's full, their bank account's empty, and they're just continuing to do the same thing over and over again. And any new thing comes in, they say, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the ability to focus. You know, that's a scarcity mentality that will never, ever end up in your destiny being anything but your history. And that's a bad thing. Okay, what Lloyd, did you have something, brother?
Yeah, just a couple of insights talking about getting rid of people in your life. Not necessarily true, just limit your exposure to them. Okay. So you don't have to be around them 24/5. The other thing is, help them understand the seminal moment that they decided that the glass was half full, right?
Yeah.
And help them to understand why. Well, Nicole will probably be better at that because we're not psychiatrists or psychologists, but something happened to that person at some point in their life that they made the decision that the glass was half empty. So, if you can help them understand that,
Yeah.
what happened to make you think that way, and get them to somebody that can provide the professional help. But, I have a friend that says, if you can't change the people around you, change the people around you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's actually that's an important balance. Yeah, Lloyd, let
Yeah.
me add to that, because you do make a good point. Sometimes people are so toxic and they're so unwilling to change that I'm not saying that you continue to surround yourself. It may be the intimacy or the frequency with which you engage with that person.
Exactly.
I would love to help everybody that comes into my life to be able to do what I can see, hopefully, that they could do, but that's just not always possible. Randy, you had your hand up. I want to go ahead and give you that, and then let's see. We got about a minute, so go ahead, Randy.
I'll try to be quick. So just, those of you who listen to my Warrior versus Zombie podcast, you'll know that I've had a PMA, positive mental attitude, my whole life, and it's grounded in my belief in God or a higher power. And so if that person doesn't have that, that makes them vulnerable, number one. But you may not be able to solve that. But I think that just recognizing their pain and their problem, and maybe ultimately, as Lloyd said, maybe ultimately you have to walk away from them. But if you do, spend some time with them first and see if you can help them. And if not, don't just dump them. Just walk away gently.
Yeah, and that's totally true, Randy, because we're a networking group, right? There's a whole bunch of people here. I can hear the problem. I can encourage them to get a solution, but sometimes I might have to refer them to somebody else, somebody professional, a Nicole or somebody. Steve, you had something, and then this will be the last one, and then I'm going to open it up. It will officially end at 1, which is now. But go ahead. I'll let you put your question.
Well, in light of what Randy just said, and we're all heading the same way, it doesn't do anybody any good to absolutely burn a bridge, save what you can, at the risk of losing yourself. That becomes too much. It's going to pull you down, then you need to make an adjustment. But based on what you said, I have a long story to tell you about dreams and stuff concerning money and cancer and all that. I'll save that for another time. But I had a friend named David Blair. He was the mayor of Farmers Branch for probably 5 terms. And he invented the downhole camera for oil drilling. He made a bunch of money. In 1996, I branched out from just credit card processing to the ATM business. And the bank will not loan you money for an ATM, nor will they loan you money to put into it. Banks see ATMs as a money loser.
Hey, Steve, can I add, can I, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, it is 1 o'clock. So I'm going to open up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the mics and you can continue to share the story, but I don't want to abuse the people that have signed up till 1 o'clock. I do want to get one quick announcement in. Next Friday, make sure we aren't having a Zoom call. So please don't show up because I won't be here either. On Wednesday we will, and the Friday, a week Friday, if you've ever heard Anil Gupta, actually Anil Gupta has advised guys like Tony Robbins and counseled with Richard Branson and so on. He's going to come to us from Florida for a session like this. So encourage you to do that. Please RSVP. And now, sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but I'm going to come back and unmute all. And I love you guys. Just know that thank you. I appreciate your investment of your most valuable asset in hearing what I have to say. Hopefully it's been of value. And I admire and love each and every one of you. And if there's, be sure and put in the chat if you want me to send you that worksheet if you didn't get it the last time. And that can be a decent foundation for us to chat about a one-on-one if there's any way I can help you in doing what you're doing. And or I can maybe point you at Randy and he can help you because he's interested in helping people that need help too. So anybody here will. But anyway, so with that, I'm unmuting everybody. The meeting is still live. This is now the informal session. And Steve, go ahead. I want to hear your story.
Dave said when I explained to him that the banks wouldn't loan money for the ATM business, and I needed a lot of it. I didn't need $50. I needed several $100,000. And he says, you need to borrow from your friends. I said, I don't have any friends that have that kind of money. And here's the point. He says, then you got the wrong friends. You think about that. It sounds hard.